take us through your reaction to how this year's Daytona 500 played out.
I thought it was a very good Daytona 500. I mean, that's 2 years running now. We haven't had a red flag. We've got through it quite okay, quite quickly, quite exciting racing as well. I thought the way the stages worked actually provided us with a lot more entertainment as well than normal. So that was a positive. I'm glad we've lost them for the road courses, though, certainly, because they don't make much sense. So we'll have to keep them at these speedways. But it was a good race. It went by quite quickly. I mean, when we came off here from USRN, we could barely believe we've been talking for 5 hours. It was quick. So it was really fun. I feel like at the end of the stages, we got snippets of what we could see at the end. That was even better. But the ending itself, I didn't like. And despite the fact the overtime rule has been in place for over 20 years and all this, and everyone's been getting used to it, and we should end on the green, I didn't like it because we had 2 attempts at it and it didn't work. So I want to say we should have stopped after 1 attempt. Excuse me, there's dust in the room. Yeah, we should have stopped at 1 attempt. 2 attempts caused multiple problems. I feel so sorry for Bush. And I, again, feel so sorry for Brad Keselowski because he's been trying to win it for years now, still can't. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. does it. But was it Joey Logano? The ending was so confusing because we had a crash on the last lap, but it was under the white flag. So that means we run to the end. It was a mess. The commentary box, we were 90% sure Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had it. But then our timing screens switched back to Joey Logano being ahead. Our timing screens we get from Timing 71 changed. Our timing screens from NASCAR changed. The official one to Joey Logano had, because he crossed the line first, he'd won. It was switching between the two. So we had no idea who was winning. We had to wait for official confirmation. But it was a mess. And it was a fumble completely from the organisers for that. And I don't think also that we were struggling in the commentary box. I was sort of acting as pit reporter and a fourth commentator alongside Adam, while Matthew and Matt had the lead call. And the amount of time I was having to listen into the spotters radio, I was having to look at extra pictures as well, because Fox just weren't showing the coverage. They were constantly every 10 laps on ad break, and then after it was every 7 laps and every 5 laps, and it was getting ridiculous. We ran green for around about 2 hours. We spent an hour under caution, and I look back during all that time, hardly any ad breaks under the caution. All the ad breaks came under green flag running. It wasn't the Daytona 500, it was the Daytona 150 plus ad breaks. It was horrendous coverage, and it happens on NBC as well. I do not know why there isn't such a streaming service for NASCAR. I don't know why it's not over the top. I don't know why. IndyCar has it. IndyCar's got the global broadcaster service as well, that for overseas people that can use it. They've got it on Peacock as well. Sometimes that goes without commercials. Sometimes it does. Here in the UK on Sky, we get it run throughout for IndyCar, but NASCAR doesn't, and it's staying behind it as well. I was bitterly disappointed about that, but it was a great race, great 500. Shame about the ending, and I'm hoping they learn from it in the future.
Well, those are the 2 exact things that I touched on when I went live on Instagram last night to give my initial reactions. It's funny, I was actually just watching Pardon Me Interruption on ESPN with Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser, and they were talking about Stenhouse winning the race and saying the race went into double overtime and trying to figure out how you can have double overtime in NASCAR. It's just, a complete foreign concept, but that's, when we try to make the sport more like the stick and ball sports, and this is being a dead horse for me, but it's very difficult for a casual fan to have all these rules ready to explain to somebody who's just watching something for the first time or only watches it once a year for the 500 or whatever the case may be. And then the commercials, and Casey, I'll bring you in for this one because I know you want to touch on this as well. You spotted an interesting Twitter thread. I think that there's been a change in expectation because people went back and they looked to compare 2001, 2010, earlier Fox broadcasts of the 500. And, if anything, like, we've been talking about here, it might be down a little bit, the number of commercials that we've gotten. I couldn't believe, I think it was GP Laps Jake that tweeted it out, 71 of the green flag
Wow.
laps in the 2001 Daytona 500 were affected by commercials. I mean, that's literally over a third of the race. It's just mind-boggling to me. But I think in this era of streaming, where especially if you pay for an ad-free tier, you can watch an episode of a TV show with no commercial breaks straight through. Obviously the Formula One races, which have become very popular here in the States, they're shown ad-free. They have title sponsors of the coverage. I think our expectations have gotten us to the point now where we think to ourselves, it's 2023, the times have changed, the business models have changed, and taking this many ad breaks to interrupt the racing action is no longer acceptable. But I'll let Casey chime in here as well, because I know he wants to touch on this subject as well.
And so going back to kind of the overtime, it's like people trying to explain NASCAR. And I think that's also why a lot of people got angry at Darren Rovell yesterday. Of course, a lot of people, the businessman of really all sports. It's like, so I know that's another discussion for another day. But yeah, so obviously Larry Mack hosts the midday show with Daniel Trott on Sirius XM. Shout out to Jacob Stillman for recording this. So he said the ad breaks, according to Larry Mack, the ad breaks from this year's Daytona 500 was 2 less than 2021 and 4 less from 2020. There's also a new producer for Fox, Chuck McDonald, of course, who I know from when I covered college football years ago. But of course, comes in there. And so he kind of comes with a vision of, getting all the ads out of the way early on, and similar to what NBC does as well. So actually the last break was actually with 30 laps to go. So there was that. So here's another interesting tidbit from you guys that was said. The big point that because one of the big wrecks that happened during the side-by-side break, Fox can't break out of those. They would have the option, however, if the wreck was in a full break, unless it's a local break, they can break out of it, because obviously local advertisers, that's why they say, we're going to break. Here's a word from your local whatever. If it's on Fox, ABC, CBS, NBC, obviously local companies and wherever you live pay for those ads to be on there. So they pay big bucks for those too. But here's the interesting thing, and I want to ask you guys this: if people don't want ads, NASCAR would have to go to a pay-per-view broadcast model. So basically, it's the only really way to support a broadcast of that magnitude, like the Daytona 500, without ad revenue. So I'll point the question to you guys: would you pay for like a streaming service, or could something like that be available? I think if you ask a number of NASCAR fans, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we'll do it." But then when you look at the cost of it, then maybe like, I don't know. I mean, for an example, and I'll let you guys chime in after that. It's like, I mean, I pay $149 a month for $149 a year for MLB.TV. Obviously, that gets you all the access to all the Major League Baseball games. So, do you think you would pay for something, like that, or like if you wanted like Sunday Ticket or NBA League Pass or NHL Home Ice or something? Would you pay for something like that?
Well, I know almost all sports have that. And again, it's not an exact comparison when you throw the stick and ball sports in there. I'll tell you for myself, I just, soccer's rising here in America. I just bought the MLS season pass for Apple TV. But again, that's a sport that I keep going back to, because you have 45-minute halves plus stoppage time uninterrupted with no commercials, because, soccer's a very low scoring sport, and it would just be Fox or NBC's luck if they went to a commercial break. That would probably be the only goal that got scored during the game. And imagine if that happens in the middle of a non-side-by-side commercial break. So it's accepted that sport does not allow for commercials. I can't think of another sport that allows for commercials during the action, because every other sport has timeouts or breaks between innings, breaks between periods or intermissions, or whatever the case may be. If NASCAR had a system like that, I don't know if at this point in my life following NASCAR, I mean, I would probably want to pay for it. I already pay for Flow Racing to get the ARCA stuff, and I have F1 TV as well. I've got a couple other streaming services I pay for, so I'd have to make sure it fits with my budget. But I can guarantee you that even if I'm not going to pay for it, there are plenty of diehard NASCAR fans out there where if you give them a commercial-free streaming option based on what my Twitter timeline was saying, I can guarantee you'd be able to earn some revenue from that to offset the cost that those fans would be costing you by not seeing those commercials. They'd be making up for it by getting the commercial-free experience. I think a lot of fans would be open to that. I don't know, Kobe and Josh, if you want to chime in on that as well.
I'd love to just jump in quickly. I've got an idea here, and I'll throw it out as well. What if we brought the stages back on every single track of the year, including the road courses? I know we just got rid of them, but here's the thing. I was timing them yesterday. In between the stages, it was 10 minutes, sometimes even 13 minutes. And during that time, they only came into the pit lane once to do the tire changes. What if we use that time to have the ad breaks? So then we come back, have the pit stops for 30 seconds, go to another set of ad breaks. That's 6 ad breaks throughout the entire race, around about 3 minutes in each length. I think that could possibly work. And then if there's a caution during the race, we go there. We must prioritize green flag running. You are always on the track and you always have the coverage, and maybe side by sides, but I don't know. I think we must prioritize full screen commercials can only be used under caution or stage breaks.
I'm gonna let Kobe or Casey go, but I definitely have some thoughts on that. But I'll defer to you guys first, since I just spoke for much of this portion here.
So here's the thing with that. The reason why we're having this discussion, because the ad breaks haven't changed. The audience has changed because of this thing. You can get things at an instant. Basically, you can go on and get information like that. And obviously, NASCAR isn't like any other stick and ball sport like football, baseball, basketball, hockey. Yes, those sports have commercials, but there's no break. You're catching all the games and stuff. There's really, no interruptions. And even, I know Fox and CBS and I think NBC and ESPN have kind of done this, where they have even put pop-up ads in those games as well, to kind of really see that as often. But also to NBC's credit, and obviously they're a victim at this with NASCAR as much as Fox is. They do. I think the last few years we have seen every green flag lap in the Indianapolis 500. I know they try to make sure that all the laps are either in full screen, all either on. You know what I mean? I can't say the word though.
They're either showing it or they're side by side. If they're under green, if there's commercial under green, it's the side by side commercial.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I think, and then during the cautions, it's they obviously would go to a full screen commercial. So, but yeah, I obviously I think I think people just don't want to see the stages. To Josh's point there, but I mean I get it. It's like you don't know when a caution is going to come out. So in that case, you might just need a pay-per-view version of that, and I think that's actually probably going to be introduced within the next few years. I would have to think, especially with the new TV contract coming up, because I know that obviously those discussions are probably already happening, that they're putting some streaming service together or their own channel together, where you could see that. I know like a flow and not like flow racing or like a flow racing where you can get all that. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. What do you think, Kobe?
Yeah. Good idea to add a streaming service where you can see the entire NASCAR race without a single commercial. I have Motor Trend on demand, Motor Trend TV to see all of the international races, and I don't get a single commercial at all, and it's a absolutely wonderful experience. And I was talking to one of my friends yesterday who watched the Daytona 500. He's just a casual NASCAR. He only watches like Daytona, the Coke 600, some of the big races, hearing him, but he really doesn't follow racing outside of that. And when he was talking about the ad placement on Fox, that race was almost unwatchable to him because he's used to watching baseball, football, and basketball, seeing all the action. And when you're used to seeing all the action like that, he's like, why are we missing laps? Yeah, and he was just very frustrated. He's like, how am I supposed to want to come back and get more into NASCAR if I'm missing a lot of things that are going on during the at it now? We either need to find a way to evolve ad placement, find better ways to do it, as Josh, you suggestion there. During the stage breaks, that would certainly eat up a lot of time and all of that. But overall, I think the introducing a streaming option where you can get a commercial-free coverage, I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And I think a lot of NASCAR fans would be willing to pay the price, no matter how expensive it is, whether it's going to be like $9.99 per month or $49.99 per year. I think there's fans there missing all of the action.
Yeah.
Just quickly, Ben.
Go ahead, Josh. Yeah.
The one problem, as I've experienced over here in the UK, is because we take NBC's coverage of IndyCar, and during the ad break, they don't talk. They literally go silent, and that's why we've had Tom Gaymore as well. He's been filling in the blanks, so to speak, during the ad breaks as our commentator over here in the UK, who keeps going and keeps us informed as well. And that's the sort of thing as well that I have noticed with other American broadcasters. As soon as the ad break starts, the commentators don't talk. Unlike what used to happen in the UK and still does. If there's an ad break here, say on Sky F1, during the practice sessions, which I still don't agree with because we pay so much for, if there's an ad break in the practice session, the commentators will keep talking because their commentary is still going out on F1 TV and all around the world. And if something happens, it'll be clipped. If in America, it's never done. So if anything happens under the caution, the commentators won't react to it. And I think that's ridiculous because you're paid to be the commentator. You're not just speaking to America. You are speaking to the English-speaking world. You keep talking. You do not stop. You keep talking. So I think if there are going to be a streaming service, the commentators could possibly be saying, really, I've got to keep talking for this long? It's not a problem for people like me who do it all the time. And at USON, we do it all the time. We never stop. And I think that's the thing. We've got to break down the narrative that TV has changed dramatically. Fox and NBC and everything like that, they're stuck in the 80s. We're all hurtling towards the future. We're streaming and everything's the future. Fox still think they've got the monopoly on motorsport, and they don't.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of great points here. I want to catch up on the chat. See our own Joe Samaniego in here saying expectations and attention span is shorter nowadays. Fans can watch F1, MotoGP, World Rally Championship, and supercars ad free. And I think that's part of it. Race fans are turning to other series where they get that ad free viewing experience, and they're wondering why can't we have it in NASCAR. Although I will say, Josh, to your point, I suppose fans love the Crank It Up segment. That would give us however many free Crank It Ups we would have there if they've got that commercial free viewing experience. They can maybe just turn the engine noise up a little bit more while the commentators get a break for the commercials for the people that aren't paying for that, and we could figure it out from there. Your idea about using the stage cautions to run the ads and taking a full 10-minute break, I think there's merit to it in principle, but I just think it would only further confirm the stereotype that some anti-stage fans have, that this is just NASCAR's way of trialing halftime or quarters or periods or whatever. If you make those breaks even longer, which it looks like NASCAR is trying to trend in the opposite direction, taking the stage cautions away from the road courses, which I think is a major victory for the quality of the racing there. I just don't know if that's a feasible solution based on the direction that they're trying to go here. But it is an interesting idea. I would certainly be open to more of those ideas because I can confirm, just like everybody, it was a very frustrating viewing experience for me on Sunday. And again, I think that's a combination of, it truly being that way with the number of commercials we're seeing, but also we have higher expectations now in this day and age of streaming. So I think it's a combination of that.
And also, don't forget the ads that were in during the race. Like we'll save that for. Go watch David Land's video about this.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, Casey. I'm glad you brought that up. It's the same. I need to try it first. Coke Zero Sugar ad 4 times, as if nobody realizes that Coca-Cola is a major partner of NASCAR anyway. Did you know it's NASCAR's 75th anniversary? I mean, how many times did we get that ad? I mean, we're watching NASCAR racing right then and there. These don't seem like, oh, that's a brand new product that I've never heard of before. There's 8 million people watching this race, or however many watch the Daytona 500 nowadays. They're going to get a major return on investment. That's an interesting product. I'm glad they showed that to me and interrupted my racing. Like, everybody knows what Coke Zero Sugar is, right? I mean, I just don't see how these ads are. I mean, they got to be getting their money's worth somehow. I mean, it's a business model that's worked for so long, but it is very, very frustrating. And I think we'll leave it at that.